Hi, and welcome to another video by Get It Done Home Repairs. Today we're going to be tiling a backsplash. I'm going to show you what kind of tools you're going to need. I'm going to explain what the tools are used for, and then we're going to get this job done. It's really a fairly simple job once you're up to this point right here. Removing the backsplash is a little bit more difficult, as I will put a link down below and you can see how I took out the backsplash underneath these cabinets. But let me explain what we're going to do and then how we're going to do it. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the different tools that are needed. Now obviously we are going to need some tiles, whatever tile you use. This tile here is a 4 by almost 13 inches. So this is the tiles that I'm going to be using here. You're going to need an adhesive. This is what they call type 1 adhesive. You can get this in any big box store. It's meant to hold on the tiles, the smaller tiles like this. The big tiles for the floors is a different type of a cement. You are going to need spacers depending on the thickness that you want in between the tiles themselves. If you wanted a certain thickness between there, you'll need to pick up whatever spacers you want to use. It's personal preference. These tiles, some of the tiles come with a little bump out on the side right here. So if you chose to use just a standard bump out, it would be sort of like this, where it sits pretty much together like that. That's not the way I'm going to use it. I'm actually going to make the joint just a little bit thicker like that. But again, that's personal preference. So it depends on what kind of a spacer you need. These are the ones we're going to be using. All right, so we're going to put that to the side. Now when you start your first course, underneath the wall right here, you'll put something like this here to actually give it some depth, so you'll have a little bit of a space above here. I am not going to be using these either. I chose to make everything uniform, so I'm going to use these spacers here like this, so that that it's uniform all the way from the bottom up to the top where it goes up underneath here. All right, so this is just another example of what kind you can use. If you needed a thicker space underneath the bottom, you can use these, and you can make it different thicknesses. All right. You are going to need a couple of different trowels. I will tell you this. This trowel, which you can see is a very, looks like about a 1/2 inch, is square. This one is meant for bigger areas and bigger tiles, so this we're not going to use. They have actually a smaller, all different sizes you can use. The one I'm going to be using is a 3/16 V-notch, because that's the one that is the best for this particular size tile. If you're using a much smaller tile, then obviously you would use a smaller notch, because it's very important that when you put these tiles on, that the back of the tile itself is pretty much covered everywhere with the adhesive. All right, so this is the one we're going to be using. I will tell you this, cleaning up the tools sometimes is a little bit of a pain in the rear end, so I use these maybe 2 or 3 times. I throw them away and I just get a new one, because getting this adhesive off of here is a little bit difficult. So that's personal preference. Again, if that's what you choose, that's what I do. All right, we're going to need something like this to get the adhesive out of the bucket. Screwdrivers, of course. You're going to need a marker to mark the tiles where you'll need to cut them, a couple of little screwdrivers, a pencil. And I will tell you this, whenever you install tiles, you will need to get longer screws, because the screws that are in here are too short. When you put this back together, you'll try to screw this in, and this screw will just barely catch. So get yourself one that's a little bit longer. I'm not pushing this particular brand, but this is the ones I use. They're 1.5 inches. They're 632 by 1.5 inches. So that's the ones that I use to give us a little more depth on the switch. It's on the light on the outlet. You'll have it out a little bit further. All right. So as you can see, our first row is laid out, which is just where we're going to put it. I will tell you this, before you do anything back here, measure it out and make sure your tiles are going to go exactly where you want them. I did measure it out, and it is going to come out perfectly on this side over here, because I am going to go back behind this refrigerator in the back over here. So I did lay it out and make my calculations already, but make sure that you actually calculate it before you start putting tiles up. Now, these tiles, are like a Subway tile, and we do is we stagger them, so it's like a 50% offset. So the first one is going to come up, it's going to go in just like that, and then the second one that we're going to put over the top of it is going to be staggered just like that. So it's actually 50% staggered. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to cut the tile. Now, to cut the tile, there's different ways you can do it. You can use a tool like this to cut the tile. You put this on here, you put your tile inside here like this. You measure your thickness, you strike it with the tile cutter a couple of times, and then you push on it and it snaps the tile. I'm not going to be using this. I'm actually going to be using a wet saw because it makes a much better cut. So that's what I'm going to be using. But if you don't have a wet saw, this is an alternative. They're fairly cheap at a big box store as well. Next thing we're going to need is we're going to possibly a utility knife. We are going to need something like this. These are nibblers to actually chip away any kind of like if you have this tile up in here and you need to actually chip it away, we're going to use those nibblers here to get in there and chip away what we don't do. What we do is we go outside with the wet saw, we cut it here, and we cut it here, and then we chip it away. But we'll get into that once we get to that point. All right, so for now, we're gonna stop what we're doing here. Before I do anything, we're gonna go out to the wet saw, which we always use outside because it's very wet, of course. Okay, so we are going to go outside now. I'm going to take you along with me, and I'm going to show you how a wet saw works. Like I said, it's a 50% stagger between the full tile on the bottom and 50% of it over the top of it. So we're going to make our mark dead center of the tile. We're going to take it out to the wet saw, cut this in half, bring it back inside here, and then we're going to get started. All right, so come on, take a walk outside. Okay, now we have our marks on the tile already, where we're going to cut it at the 50%. So we are now going to turn the saw on. We're going to be very careful. You want to make sure you wear some kind of safety goggles just so you don't get anything in your eyes. And then we're just going to go very slowly. You don't want to force the tile through the saw, because if you force it, you run the possibility of cracking it or getting a bad cut. So we're going to let the saw do the work. We're going to use a scrap piece of tile just to push it through so that we don't accidentally hurt our hands. Shut the saw off and make sure it comes to a complete stop. And as you can see, it's a nice clean cut on both sides. So now we have two at 50% to put up. Okay, now that we made our cuts on the edge of the tile here, and we have two exact same sizes, now this is personal preference. If you choose to do it, that's great. If you don't want to, it's not a big deal. You take a stone like this and you'll take off the rough edge right on here. If you were putting tiles up against something that's going to be actually where you want it a little bit dull, you can take a tool like this and you just run it across the top like that, and it takes off the sharp edge right off of here. So we're going to do that real quick, and then we're going to get started. Now I will tell you this, if you don't have it, don't worry about it. It's really not that important. Okay? So if you have it, use it. If not, it's okay. Next thing we're going to do now is we're going to take our adhesive, and we're going to do just a small area where we're going to be putting the tiles. You don't want to put adhesive on the entire backsplash and then not get to it quick enough, because the adhesive will dry and the tile won't adhere to it properly. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take adhesive, put it on here. We're going to take this, we're going to put the adhesive on, and we're going to bring it up like this from bottom to the top. And then after that, we're going to go from side to side so that we have a nice uniform bead of mastic on there, or adhesive. When you use the tool, you're going to use it at an angle such as this, because you want to make sure that you have a 3/16 row of adhesive on it. You don't want to use it like this. You want to use it like this so we have a nice clean row on there. All right, so let's get started, and we'll see how it goes. All right, remember, you don't want to do too much of an area. You want to do just enough that you can cover it and it's not going to dry out. I do cover up whatever surface I'm working on, because you don't want to take a chance on damaging the surface that you have. All right, so let's put some on. I'm just going to spread it in there a little bit. You want to make sure you get everything, even in the corners right over here. It's very important that you get into the corners as well. Okay, now when you put your tile in, you got to put your tile in. I will tell you this, make sure you take your stickers off the back. We don't want to leave these on here. When you put your tile in, you're going to push your tile in. You're going to give it a little bit of a twisting motion until you set it in place. So we're going to take the tile, lay it in here like this, push it in. Same thing, just push it in here. A little bit of a twisting motion. And then we're going to take our spacers. And I'm going to put my spacers underneath the tile. Okay, now we're going to take our cut tile. The one that we actually cut the end is what's going to go up against the wall right there. So now we're going to take this, we're just going to put it in, the same thing, a little bit of a twisting motion. We're going to put our spacers in there. Now we're going to take our second tile. Now you can see right here, we're going to need to make a cut right here. See this? So what we're going to do now is we're going to take off this here because we have to go back outside. So we're going to, okay, so now we're going to put this on hold for a second here. We're going to continue down the wall and we'll run the rest of them in. Again, we're going to put the tile in, lean it up on it, a little bit of a twisting motion. Put your spacers underneath. Okay, so now we have the first row of tiles is actually done. Let me just show you real quick. Okay, so the first row of tiles is in. We're now gonna cut this piece out right here so we can actually cut it around the switch itself. So let me get my Sharpie and we'll continue. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna bring our tile in the way it's supposed to be. We're gonna bring it up in here. You know what? We may not have to cut this one actually. It may be enough. Let's just take this this outlet out a little bit. Okay, we do not have to cut this here, but let me just fix this one piece here. I thought I was going to have to cut it, but I guess not. Okay, so now we'll take our tile again. We're going to push it up in place here. Okay, we just barely cleared the bottom of the box right down here. Otherwise, I was going to have to cut a little piece out of it, but we'll do that when we get over here. All right, so let me get my spacers. We'll put some spacers in, and we'll continue. Okay, as you can see right here, the screw will clear the box, so we don't have to cut that one there. All right, let's continue on this row. Now let me show you this one here. This one, we are going to need to cut this out because as you can see, this box is a little bit lower than the other box. So we're going to come back to this in just a minute. What we're going to do now is we're going to come back over here and get that tile back in there. Okay, now we're going to take this tile here and we're going to stick this tile in place now. Okay, now we're going to make our measurements here, but I just want to point this out to you. If it's going to be a couple of minutes and we're going to go outside and cut this tile, we're going to take the adhesive back off so it doesn't dry. And you can just scrape it off. Okay, just make sure you take your adhesive back off so it doesn't dry because tiles won't adhere to adhesive that's dried out. All right, so let me get my Sharpie and we'll mark it up and continue. Okay, now we're going to mark our tile before we go outside and cut it on the wet saw. I will tell you this type of a cut on a wet saw is a lot easier than trying to use those nibblers because the nibblers you'll need to cut up quite a bit, so you got to be real careful with it. But if that's the only thing that you have is something like this, you can use it on there, okay? All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put this up here where it's going to be situated. We're going to mark where the outside of the box is, and that's where we're going to do our first cut right there and right there. All right, now we're going to need the height of it as well. And we're going to come down 1 inch. Okay, so this is what we're going to cut out outside. I'm not going to take you outside to do it because it's just a matter of cutting a straight line up this way and a straight line up this way, and then we're going to take this out up to that line right there. All right, so the way we do that is we're going to, you know what, I'll bring you outside. I'll show you how it goes. Okay, now we're just going to cut on the one line. We're going to cut it down to that 1 inch mark that we put on there. So we're going to set our guide up so that we have a nice straight cut and it doesn't actually go crooked. So once we set it up, we'll bring our cover back down, and that'll keep the water from being thrown all around, and we'll make our first cut. Remember, you want to cut it very slowly. You don't want to cut it too quick and crack the tile. And we're going to wait for our blade to stop so that we don't accidentally catch it and snap the tile. We're going to remove our guide now. We're going to bring the guide around so that we can make our second cut. It doesn't fit on the one side, so we're going to remove it. And we're going to move that guide over to the left side. And now we'll bring our tile up against the guide, set the guide and lock it in place, and then we can make our second cut so that it's a nice straight line as well. Nice and easy. You don't want to push it too hard and crack the tile. Okay, and then there you can see we'll have a nice clean cut across the top and down each one of the sides, so it's a nice level cut to fit around the socket. All right, let's go inside and continue. Okay, so as you can see, putting the tiles up is really not that bad. The main thing is just doing your cuts around the outlets to make sure they come out good. I am going to have to do a couple of more cuts over here, but that gives you the idea of what you're going to do. Now we're going to let the adhesive dry for probably about a day, and then we'll take out these spacers in between here, and then, of course, they just pull right out. I will tell you this, if you look and you see any of the joints are filled with adhesive, you may want to take a very small screwdriver and clean out the adhesive, because we will need to put grout inside there. But that's it. We're going to finish up this run of tiles, and then we're good to go. All right, so what I'll do is when I'm ready to grout it, I'll make another video on how to grout the backsplash. All right, as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.